Hey, happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome back. This is the fifth, if you can believe it or not, Springboard at Home. The days and weeks seem to be flying by here on my glass box in Dallas, Texas. But today we're honored to have Shelly Sun as well as Tam Kennedy. Every week we are looking to bring you leaders, bring you folks that are really out there on the front lines. Things are fluid. Things are changing every single day, every single week. And so this is a good way for us to huddle up and get fresh news and what's fresh. So today you're definitely going to want to have a piece of paper and a pen, a Papel e-Boligrapho, as I've been working on my Rosetta Stone during the COVID times. But before we kick off, before we bring our esteemed folks on, Brad and Lane, any top of the house comments, updates, etc.?
I don't know. Lane, you want to go into Switchboard? You're probably better than that than me right now.
Yeah, I would just say, we're still actively promoting the Switchboard campaign for folks who have been displaced or furloughed or laid off, whatever the difference in some of those words is, but whose future is uncertain, to try to create a repository for folks who are hiring and growing to find the qualified, trained people as opposed to starting from scratch. And so we're getting a lot of traction on it. Hopefully you're seeing that pop up in your feeds because we launched a campaign around it. We have some exciting news that we'll announce probably a little bit later in the week or early next week. I love this, connection that we all have together. This is, to me, the glue of the franchise family that, I've spent a lot of time with Tam and a lot of time with Shelly, a lot of time with Brad and Ryan. And it's amazing how many folks or how big that extended family is. And Shelly, I know from the beginning, and I know, and we've stayed in touch obviously through these times, and I know her to be the most active, aggressive human being on the planet in terms of showing leadership and communication to her franchisees who are frankly, an essential business. I don't think she ever paused once. I think that she was on this and required to react with no downtime or little to no downtime. And I think she sets a shining example as to what folks can do and what you can do to lead your organization through, change like this. Tam, you and I have known each other a little, not quite as long, but I've enjoyed our conversations together. And to say that you roll your sleeves up and that you're fully invested in this, or should we use the word all in, to your employees, to your organization, is heartwarming to me. I think that it's the opposite of the panic mode of just get rid of everybody. And, and I love the ability to chat with you about that, to get a real sense of what's happening in markets as they reopen and be able to share those challenges and hopefully opportunities and solutions with the rest of the community. Because here in Philadelphia, Chicago, I don't think we're ever going to open, or at least not until people make a lot of inroads elsewhere. So I don't want to take up a lot of your time because I know folks sign on to hear from you folks, but I'm very grateful for you. I know we all are, for your friendship, for your franchise family participation, and certainly for getting on something like this on short notice.
I've been very lucky, and I've been spending many, many Saturday nights with Shelly and Tam. Unfortunately, those times it's over a glass of wine as we're going through Zoom. And I want to tell you, as Lane kind of reiterate what Lane just said, how many, I won't even say hours, that would be an embarrassment to say, tens and 20s and hundreds of hours that both of these wonderful women have spent with the IFA, fighting for what's important to the community. Tam is, every day is going through, she does, as we were just talking about it, talking with legislators, hearing what Shelly just sent, we're jumping on. Shelly goes, well, I got congressman call at 1 o'clock Central Time and one at 1:30. And I want you to know they are not getting paid for this. It's countless tens and 20s of hours they've really put back trying to protect our interest in franchising, working hand in hand with the IFA as they really do that. So on behalf of the franchise family, I'd like to thank both of you. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, and so we can really hear what's really going on in the day-to-day.
Okay.
Yeah, for the two people in the audience that don't know Tam or Shelly, Shelly Sun is the founder and CEO of BrightStar Care. Tam Kennedy, she's also the past chairwoman of the International Franchise Association, as Brad was just alluding to. Both of these folks have been amazing in terms of the time, the hours outside of business that they've given to the franchise family. And Tam Kennedy is a multi-unit franchisee of Taco John's. So both of you guys, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start with Shelly. Just first and foremost, give a little bit of overall perspective, your perspective on this, because you guys at BrightStar have been open throughout all of this. So one, give some perspective, and then two, what are some of the ideas and some of the ways that you've been able to maximize the impact for the franchisees? There's a lot of things, and as we were talking about before on kind of a prep call a couple of days ago, there's a lot of things that franchisors can do that cost money, time, and resources. But you've noted a lot of things that they can do that don't cost a lot of money and that don't break the bank. So perspective and thoughts on that impact.
Yeah, I mean, we started seeing it come early. I mean, obviously being in healthcare. So as early as March 6th, I was already trying to source PPE, personal protective equipment, to keep our caregivers on the front line safe. That is not an easy process. There is a lot of counterfeit. There are huge dollars expended for minimum order quantities. We received our first PPE on April the 6th. So 4-week lead time. So really that was my first order of business, is if I can keep my clients and my caregivers safe, I'll have business continuity no matter how choppy it is. And so that was one of the first things I set into action. The second was, in the absence of information, people will create their own story, and it's usually going to be more negative than the one that I would create. And so communication platform was really critical. So already around the week of March 13th, we had a daily communication come out from what we call a COVID-19 email box. So we had a new mailbox set up that about 6 of my staff were watching it. So I wasn't having to see every response coming to it. I had a group of people, my clinical, my communications, marketing, operations, watching that and responding to those communications. And we had a communication that went out to that group every day, Monday through Friday, for the first 4 weeks. And so it was everything from how do you virtually hire? What are the screening protocols? Because we had to, by March 19th, we were screening our caregivers before they went into a client's home to make sure they didn't have symptoms, because that kept our clients safe. By March 26th, we were screening our clients as part of the shift, making sure they weren't developing symptoms that meant that our PPE requirements for our caregivers needed to increase. So it was all about, no matter what any of our franchisees or their teams needed to know, there was a communication all in one place once a day between 3 and 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. And like I told you a couple of days ago, that's something any franchisor, regardless of size or scale, could execute on. That's just communication. It's an email box. It's cheap. And then twice per week, I was setting out a video to keep hope and momentum information for our franchisees, but so that they could see me. My marketing team says it's supposed to be 2 to 3 minutes. It can be anywhere from 2 to 3 to 10. I am passionate about what we do. So other than going too long, I've been one to, make sure I'm communicating with my franchisees. After our first 4 weeks, we went to a 2 time per week communication. Because really for us, while the rest of the country is starting to kind of prepare for opening, it's starting to become a new normal for us is screening and PPE and the things that we're kind of dealing with are normal course. So those are some of the things that we had to do early on, was figure out how do we do it safely. That was PPE, that was training, that was screening. How do we make sure we have a communication cadence that we can do relatively easy? And then what other communications or resources do we have where we need to go virtual? We do training for our brand new franchisees and brand new people that our franchisees hire every single month. Again, not very expensive. We used WebEx and we all took some responsibility for a couple of weeks and recorded our sessions we would normally do live and made them available online. Not the best experience compared to live, but most of our scores have been a B- to B+ versus an A, given the fact that we don't want people traveling probably until August to the corporate headquarters. Yeah. It's good enough to get the information deployed. So virtual training, we were supposed to have a conference in April in Dallas. We took it fully virtual. It kicks off on Friday. Tomorrow, it will go for 4 weeks. We spread it out so that people could consume as much as they could and still keep the lights on everything else. And then discovery days have gone virtual as well. So I think we've used the power of technology as best we could in communicating with our franchisees, their teams, and then not wanting to limit how we communicated with each other. We do a morning and daily stand-up on Zoom for half an hour with my entire senior leadership team, so we can all see kind of what's going on, keeping ourselves apprised. We did that for about 4 weeks. Now it's just afternoon daily, and twice per week on a Tuesday, Friday, 15 minutes, I give a state of the state to my entire team, so a little over 100 people. And now I'm starting to have guest stars. So more of the organization is getting able to hear what their peers do. So for us, the best way that we have seen this crisis through is communicate. And that doesn't take a lot of dollars to do it. And I know Tam is very passionate similarly on setting that great example and making sure there's good communication.
Yeah, Tam, if you want to add anything, add to it. But one of the things at the top here, what I wanted to hit, I did not get to see the segment, but literally as we were doing the planning call as we were just chatting, really it was more friends hanging out chatting. But what was that segment about? You went on to Fox Business News. So talk a little bit about that and then add any other thoughts to maybe what Shelly said.
Sure. Actually, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I do feel like I'm in your living room and we're all friends, so that makes it easy. But for everybody that doesn't know me, Tam Kennedy, Taco John's franchisee. I have 9 restaurants, 8 in Minnesota and 1 in Iowa. And so Fox Business 2 days ago, when I went on with that team, we talked about the challenges of operating in 2 different states and trying to understand the rules for opening, how to plan for those. In Minnesota, we have lots of different counties that our restaurants are in, and the counties have health departments. So we're likely to see different rules come from different counties in terms of when and how to move furniture or wear masks, yes or no, or, all of the things. Iowa, very different than Minnesota, opened fully on May 1st. And so we're lucky that we had maybe a practice session with the one restaurant down there, but it hasn't been as easy as you think. And I think back to communication and Shelly's point, every single bit of information we get, we need to write down and see where that fits in our own internal communication plans, because we think that our consumers are watching this as closely as we are, and they are not. They don't know what all of the reopening rules are or partially closed rules are. And so we've had some guest interactions, and I shared that with Fox Business about the concerns from guests who think everybody should have to wear full gear, right, in a restaurant, the face shield and the slippers over their shoes, and those things are not going to work in a kitchen. But they see that, an image of that on the 6 o'clock news, and they think that everywhere else that they go should be doing that. And there's a communication gap. So our job as operators is to make sure, first of all, that our team knows what we need them to do to take Shelly's information as a franchisor, my brand's information, and digest it and put it out in language that our team can internalize and really respond to. My motto has been, and most people have heard me say this from many stages, I really believe this to be true, and someday that I will write this book, but in the end, our young people that work for me really comes down to one simple concept. All they want is tell me why and show me how. They don't want the background. They don't want to know legislatively or what's going on in Italy. They just want to know, why do I have to wear this mask? Or show me how I'm supposed to do this new procedure. That's it. And so we have to take it all the way from government to brand to owner to the kids. And they're all my kids, regardless of age. So it's been challenging. I shared a little bit of that. I also shared our new crisis, which I think most people aren't hearing enough about, which is a commodity shortage. And was prepped on that yesterday morning. I'm going to be in the weeds on June 1st with the price of ground beef. Note to self for all of you, go buy some and put it in your freezer because there won't be a whole lot here in about 2 weeks. Our ground beef is going to more than double in price. And I made a commitment on Fox Business, and I made a commitment to my team and my communities. I'm not going to raise my prices. People need value. I need value. I'm going to eat it. I just hope that I have hamburger because you kind of need it to make a taco. So.
Well, I told you folks in the audience to have papel y boligrafo, and that was already a lot of really great information. In the spirit of the topic here being leadership through crisis or leading through crisis, we had someone from the audience submit the question upon registration. How do you determine your areas of focus when so much is happening at the same time? Shelly, we'll kick this one first over to you.
I think it's about really analyzing it for me from the franchisee's perspective. So when I prioritize, and I went the first 3 weeks, I was in a downtown apartment. I never came out of it. I worked 22 hours a day. I slept 2 hours. I got up and did it again the next day. So for 3 weeks, I was completely on what my brand needed. And so how I prioritize is how is a brand going to need to adapt for our caregivers and our clients? And so it was all about safety and policies and screening. How am I going to make sure the brand is sustainable and my franchisees are sustainable? And so what does that look like if sales are going to drop, and they are? How do I make sure I proportionally make some cuts so that while they're always painful, I do them early so that I know 6 or 12 months from now, I can sustain as a franchisor. Same thing for franchisees. They're going to be needing to do some of the same modeling and decision-making. And so we prioritize a few things. How do we help them with really good cash flow tools that are really simple to plan out their cash? Cash will be king going through a crisis. As soon as we knew about PPP loans, it was a critical priority of me and my entire team. I had a spreadsheet that tracked every franchisee. I know what bank that they applied to. I know the minute they got approved for every single franchisee sorted by state. If one got approved by one community bank, I asked that franchisee to get the other 3 franchisees in the same state to apply through that same local lender, since I knew they could, and there was a relationship there. So across 38 different lenders, we had 180 eligible franchisees. 100% of them needed PPP. 100% of them received PPP. But it was a Herculean effort, but it was one of those early things that I prioritized because I knew that my mix of business was shifting. I knew that a lot of my personal care business was coming down. People were scared, so they stopped service. And what I was filling it in with was more staffing and more temperature checking. That was part of one of those early stages, is how do we keep revenue going, but the mix might change. As the mix changed, the days they had to wait to get paid increased. So access to cash was going to be critical for my franchisees to stay in business. My dear seniors pay every week. A staffing contract or an American Airlines is going to take 6 to 8 weeks to pay. So as we shifted mix, we went from fast pay to slow pay. So we had to be nimble, both in what sources of business kind of ebbed and flowed, but also the funding mechanisms, because I didn't have the balance sheet to lend to them. What were the funding mechanisms in terms of cash flow planning and PPP that were absolutely essential? And I said to my franchisees, we will not leave one man down. Everything that it took. I mean, I did personalized emails. I was driving my franchisees, I'm sure, crazy. But Tam knows. I mean, I was at 20 hours a day, 24 hours a day. I need a response. You haven't told me that you have a confirmed E-Tran number. I need to know your E-Tran number. What date did you get it? And I was sending out a spreadsheet of every single franchisee and whether they had funding or did not have funding out to every single franchisee. And generally, with maybe 3 exceptions, my franchisees were very supportive that I was being so transparent and able to say, you applied here based upon your loan size and your geography. Here's where I want you to go apply as well. I want you to have at least 2 oars in the water when we get to PPP2, because I got to make sure, you have to make sure you get it funded. And I only had a few franchisees that were like, I can't believe you shared my personal information. I'm like, everybody knows what you bill every week. Your billing is a certain proportion of your payroll. If I take 2.5 months of that, within $5,000, there's not a franchisee in the system that couldn't estimate what your loan size is going to be. So get over it for the greater good and let's move on.
Tam, anything that you would add in terms of how to allocate the focus and what to focus on?
Sure. Sure. Well, first of all, have as a friend of Shelly's, but also as someone who I look to for structural advice when there are really critical decisions to make. She's a great critical thinker. We've kind of gone through this discussion since it began. And I will just say this. I know a lot of franchisors. I have lots of friends in the franchise family that are franchisors. And what she did was extraordinary in support of her franchisees. My story is different. I'm with a much smaller brand, a 51-year-old brand who had decisions to make on their own. And I tend to, when I'm challenged with a crisis like this, I tend to get ahead as a franchisee of 37 years. I maybe sometimes lead. As an example, we have self-serve salsa bars in our restaurant. So you order your food, you can go get lots of different cups of the really good salsas that you'd like to put on your meal. Before we were asked to, I think it was maybe around March 2nd, I emailed my team and I said, pull it down, all of it. I don't want the handles. I know what's coming. I don't know who's going to tell me. It's either going to be the health department or the brand, but they need to come out. It's what we got to do. I'm fearful that I'll be behind the PR problem of you let that stay out too long. You may have caused a problem. So I put together my list of pulling everything back plan, sent it to my brand and said, this is what I'm doing. We hadn't gotten that from the brand. I think they used some of the stuff that in fact, I'm sure they looked at some of the things that I did, but they also added on to some things that they had been researching. And together, then with a lot of input from a lot of franchisees, there was a real good plan of where to focus. My main focus is always going to be the health of my team and my guests. The first thing I always go to is food safety, always and forever. We use fresh ground beef. We use a lot of fresh ingredients. Most of our ingredients are hand prepped on site. Some of those salsas we make from recipe cards from scratch every day. So we're slicing and dicing away, and this kind of pops into our world, and we're thinking right away, before they even talked about how you can contact it or how you get it, was just there's a problem, right? So that meant that I had to dial up the food safety awareness, that we had a special call. And one of the ways that I communicate directly with my employees, the line employees, is payroll check stuffers. And I still believe in this to this day. The one time I know that I have their attention is when they open up the envelope with their check. And that we still are old school, that they actually get a check in an envelope with their name and usually a smiley face or some stars or whatever else they've earned, and a note that said, you know, it's going to get bumpy. We are here for you, whatever you need. And we started hearing stories about right away whole families of our employees, that our employees were the only ones that had a job. Both parents laid off, a couple of younger age kids out of school, and the 18-year-old is on my staff. They are the only income earner. Remember, before unemployment kicks in, right? We started hearing stories about how are people going to eat and what are we going to do, and that whole everything crashed in the middle of the night, right? It was just silence on the streets. The first thing that I did was created meal kits, grocery bags full of all the ingredients to make meals for our employees to take home. I felt that that was important. For my general managers, I sent them all a little surprise gift that you go online and you get to pick your own. You get to pick your own treat as it is. And I told them, you're going to need sugar to get through this, because you know what? That's how I roll. So they all got to get their own little box of hand selected candy. As GMs, they thought that was the coolest thing ever. It's the small things, doesn't cost very much. It's the small things that made a difference. My employees know that if they can't make a car payment, if there's going to be a problem with rent, they just have to ask. We will find a way to help where we can. We will absolutely find a way. And I got to tell you, 120 employees, I think we've had maybe 12 that have made the tough decision to say, I'd rather go on unemployment, or I just, you know, my parents don't want me to work. That's another layer of bosses, by the way. I also have the parents as bosses because they control my workforce, rightfully so. Most of them have stood in there. They are warriors. I love that. I've been in my restaurants now the last couple of weeks, and I see these kids come in. On March 7th, we started wellness check-ins way before people talked about it. We created our own form. We got our thermometers when you actually could still get them to take body temps, and we've been checking them in since then. So first things first, my motto is always, the tacos don't make themselves. You need a team. And so our crew people needed to know that everything was fine and safe, and then we would get through it. I delegated. My son is our district manager. My sister is my office manager, and I'm the third person. That's it. That's what we have. We have a properties manager who's my son's best friend. So he is also that child that I get to boss around that I've known since he was 12. So we have a team of 4 to run 9 restaurants in 2 states. And it really is, you're good at this, go get some shields put on our drive-through windows. That's what our property manager did. And Jesse had to work with each of the 9 managers as we started figuring out what was going to happen. We'll tell you, day 1 of the full everybody shuts down, sales dropped 55%. That was a shock. Nobody came out, 55%. And we're used to making $8 every 3 minutes. Average guest check, $8, average drive time, 3 minutes. When you lose that cash flow instantly, yet you still have rents and stuff, then you go into round 2, which is fiscal responsibility, right? Shelly, you're like, you better start figuring out where you're going to get cash. So we started with our team. I gave instructions, let the leaders run with their responsibilities. And then my other job was to figure out how to survive. So you'll hear me say a lot, I have 2 jobs. One is my regular job and one is my COVID job, which is working through this. And then the other 8 hours a day, like Shelly, is doing my regular job. So 20-hour days, lived in this office a lot to get to where we're at today, which is still not fully opened, unfortunately, but we're much better at the hiccups and the bumps that we're facing right now.
It's so important. And you kind of talked about, and I've known Shelly I've known Tam for a while, but I've known Shelly for a real long time. And you mentioned the word unexpected. And this is what I love about this word, is leading through COVID-19. You know, I joked around about this. Here we're doing a thing and I have to put it on mute because frequently I can hear the lawnmower going back and forth. I didn't normally plan for the lawn service to be coming out at this time. So it's planning for it. And like you said, you were shocked, Tam, when you first saw what you were down. I know Shelly's been prepared for everything, but you're not prepared when they tell you your PPE stuff won't be in for another 3-4 weeks.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of make those split decisions that really help and put leadership there? Tam, you're doing it as a franchisee, knowing that, you know, I remember when we were all on the phone, you said, I am not laying off one person no matter what.
Nope.
Some people make the decision for you. And, you know, then others like Shelly had to find and someone goes, Shelly got all of her franchisees PPP. I said, if I know Shelly, she had charts and she had staff focusing on it. So how do you make those decisions kind of about leading through and making the decisions that we all sometimes just don't work out?
Well, for me, I'm not going to back down from the challenge. I the unexpected, I tend to get more focused the worse the crisis is. I feel like there was a 5 to 7 day period there where I was not sure if I was going to be able to survive it, given a huge gap in the information that we all needed and the hysteria that we all felt bubbling up inside our families and our communities. There was that window of what are we going to do? And I didn't sleep. I usually don't when there's a lot of crisis. And I really I'm a structured person. I'm a planner. So I love checklists, and I made columns on tablets that help me understand siloing off what had to be done first. I'm a flow chart person too. So deep and wide, how to solve it, who to put in charge of what. We divided. My leadership team is made up of a couple of GMs and our district manager and I. And so we divide and conquer every time. And we one half of the group puts out fires and the other half starts anticipating next fires. And so I have to be super clear, super fast. And I've made a couple of mistakes, very small ones, but where I've said, do this. And then an hour later, no, don't do that, do this. And that comes from trying to work as fast as the information changed in the beginning. We are lucky in the food business that we have access to gloves. We've always worn gloves in our restaurants. We wear them when we're not required to. We wear them. I just believe in that. We have open kitchens. I think it's important for our guests to know that we're handling their food in a food safe environment. So I didn't have to worry so much about that, but there were still other concerns. We went to shortened hours because we didn't know how to manage. There's no traffic, so there's no commuting. So breakfast just disappeared from 6 to 10 in the morning, gone. So it took us maybe 3-4 days to realize, yep, we're going to start opening later. We'll push labor to where so we're data heavy too. I look at day parts every 15 minutes by store to figure out when to schedule, when to prep. We're a very structured group around here, having the opportunity of having done this for such a long time, that the trends we can adapt to. Leading through it for me is always, don't go negative, right? There's always a way. There's always going to be a way. We had to close one of our stores. It's in a food court. That hurt. First thing I did was try to figure out how to move those people to other restaurants so they didn't lose their hours and their commitments to their family and the bills that they had. Not one landlord has offered rent relief. There is zero out there for me in terms of rent relief. So I have a closed restaurant. That means I'm going to have to work really hard on another spreadsheet to figure out which of the open stores are going to pay that rent, right? So it is juggling. I do sometimes hear that clown music in the background, that da 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 da, that thing. I feel like I do that a lot, but I always do it knowing there is a solution. I have a plaque in my office on the wall that says, hope is not a way out, it's a way through. So I don't curl up and give up. I'm certainly busy praying at the same time, but I'm working towards my final outcome. And the people that I have in our company, the amazing general managers that I have, same people. They're standing in there 6 and 7 days a week, making sure that everything's going the way it's supposed to. We lead because that's what we would expect from each other. Every one of our households counts on each other to pay our bills and to come out of this healthy and happy. And so we remember that with each other when we're on our calls.
Hey, Tam, my kids, we were talking about this webinar. They're very interested in my webinars. They wanted me to tell them what the dining experience was going to be like. And we had seen some Dr. Oz clip where he was not only suggesting that you had to be spread apart or maybe subject to occupancy, but even separated by shields from your own dinner patrons, your 4-pack top. And so Any idea? I guess it'll roll out slow and it'll match when people come in and how they do it. But what?
Yeah, I
what
saw
do you
that.
hear?
I saw that clip. So most of my furniture is modular, not all of it, but we can move tables around into pods in each of the dining rooms. The biggest table we have is a 6-seater. No, I'm not going to put up shields so that if you and I wanted to eat, that there was a shield between us. We're going to have to make that choice before we decide to dine out, right? That we can dine. Really hard to eat a taco with a mask on. I got to tell you, we've tried it. It's ugly. And my kids have made some really fun videos about that too. So yes, there's a shield. All of my stores, even though the lobbies aren't open in Minnesota, the one in Iowa is, there are plexiglass shields in front of the cashiers so that as you're ordering, there is no contact. We can't bring your lunch to you at the table anymore. We've kind of cordoned off. We'll call you, and yes, we have the 6-foot stickers, and when we call your name, you'll come up and get your meal. In Iowa, there's no self-serve soda machines. That's a no. I want you to think about that. If you take the lid off and drink out of a cup and then go put that cup on the lever to get a refill, your lips are going on the next person's cup. So, you got to think about what you touch and how that kind of all works. So rings are coming from behind the counter. That's a push in a busy kitchen to get you to get you a soda when it's supposed to go through the drive-through window. Now they're serving pop out of one machine to both areas. But we didn't want to pull furniture. I don't want it to look like an odd experience to guests. So we marked every other table. This table is closed. We put some really cute Mexican fiesta flags on them. Choose another table that's open, and all of the open tables have signs that say, this table has been sanitized for your use. Every single time a guest gets up, an employee, fully gloved, comes out, re-sanitizes the sign, puts it back. Trick of the trade, we put it on the edge of the table, and we know that drives you crazy as a consumer. The first thing you do is pick up the sign and move it somewhere else on the table. That's how we know that table's been used. We can see it from the kitchen, right? So all of that is happening, and it is different, and we miss visiting with our guests. They've been coming to us for a long time, but the goal as a restaurant operator is to make it still feel like a place that you're comfortable in, that you're confident in, without making you feel like you're on a different planet. It's going to be a trick for a lot of restaurants, but it can be done. It can be done.
Okay,
so
I'm
Shelly,
gonna
wait, Brad. Let me just ask Shelly one question, because people who didn't have your leadership or your access to PPE or anything else, because we know my wife is in the medical equipment business. She would turn up places, Shelly, and you could not distinguish like an underwater diving bell diver from this individual rendering care. Like, they were no longer sweet little nice people. They were so covered and so unusual looking because it wasn't standard, it wasn't branded, it was like what people could find at that moment. But will it ever go back to just two people, I guess, in mass interacting? Is that the way that'll be? Or will people have face masks and full gowns to go do the business?
I think it depends how long it takes before we get full testing, antibody and regular, and then what the timeline is for vaccination. I think that will determine how this evolves for all of us. Right now, considering the high-risk demographic of those over the age of 60, and particularly those over the age of 80, I'm more concerned with keeping them safe and having access to the right PPE. I mean, I looked at no less than 200 potential orders of PPE to get it right. I mean, there's not an article that you can scroll through and not see how plagued PPE has been with fraud. And I could see how that would be really easy to say, oh, I found it and it's really cheap, and so I'm going to order it. You know, if it's not on the CDC, you have to cross-check, is it on the CDC list? Is it NIOSH approved? Does it have over strap way of holding it secure, or is it ear loop? I mean, you could rule out 90% of forgeries really quickly, but people didn't take the time. They were so quick to want to check the box that they had it. And we've put hundreds of hours and over $2 million into our PPE because it was important to us. Maybe to kind of Ryan's question that was for Tam in terms of how do we think through keeping, when there's so many things to do, how do you kind of keep a mindset on some of it? I mean, for the first 3 weeks, we did use Teams. We did let teams and each person having a part of teams, what needs to be done, what's the priority for the day. We had to truly live in a daily or weekly world for 4 weeks. And then we did our quarterly session of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. We followed Traction pretty religiously. It was the first time we delayed Traction slightly. We didn't do a full day, we did half a day. And we came into it and said, half of the resources for the quarter have to be about keeping us safe and addressing the pandemic, but half of our resources have to get us beyond this crisis and get us ready to thrive. And that's how we've prioritized our resources, our investments, our communications, and our education for us and with our franchisees.
Okay, now I'm going to ask my selfish question. And because this is a question I'm sure many individuals...
No, I won't make you pot roast for a couple more months.
But the question is, you know, obviously, Shelly, your office is probably 20 minutes away from my office. I am curious, and I'm sure there's lots of people out in our audience who are curious right now, is how should we set up our offices? I'm going under the realization, being in Illinois, we can't open any earlier than probably June 1st. We'll delay that further. How have you thought about what you need for PPE for an office as franchise systems are opening up now or will be opening up over the next 30, 60 days?
Absolutely. And I think there's two different sets. And so it'd be great to, you know, hear Tam's perspective after. I think if the location is going to be one that is going to interact and service the consumer, that has to be open now, or we're, you know, risking our economy for a lifetime, right? It needs to be open safely, but as soon as possible. But if we think about our corporate offices like yours, like mine, we have seen that we've been able to be very efficient working from home. Now, we deployed technology like Microsoft Teams. So I know I can buzz someone at a moment's notice and I know that they're working and they're not working. We've broken everything down into what do I need to have delivered from you on a weekly basis to know people are productive. For us, we have said we will not go back full time in the office with all functions until the end of August. We will begin doing phased in approaches beginning in June once it's safe to do so and things are lifted. But everyone will have a mask that wants to wear a mask, and they'll be the disposable kind. So you'd have, you know, 25 a week for each employee and however many employees are there. We only have one kitchen and one coffee station now. We'll set up 3, so there's not people congregating around the coffee. We have increased the cleaning requirements and frequency of what we will look at. And generally, we will have, if certain departments are there Monday, Wednesday, others would be there Tuesday, Thursday, others potentially Friday. They would have all the cleaning tools to clean their own workstation. So they're cleaning it down very heavily in a very safe way to put it away. But my bias is going to be, if you feel like you can be as effective and efficient at home and your boss feels the same way, we're not going to rush to be one of the first businesses back open. We'll probably be among the later ones. We've said if anyone travels on commercial airfare on a commercial plane, that they should not come back into the office for a 2-week period of time. And we won't have people that are traveling in our office until September. All monthly trainings are virtual through August, and all discovery days, which are for franchise development, are virtual through the end of August. I won't risk my team that someone's come on a plane, not wore a mask, not had great hand hygiene, and exposes my team to being sick. So we're taking an abundance of caution approach, but we've also been able to see that our people have been abundantly productive working from home. And if I'd say on the rare exception, there's a performance improvement plan issue that we need to address. It probably existed pre-COVID. It's becoming much more visible during COVID, but 99% of my employees, I believe, have been as efficient, if not more efficient, including myself, working from home.
How do both of you, and obviously, Tam, I know this answer because you've already answered this. How do you feel about gloves in the office? I'm hearing both sides.
I would tell you, so here's what you need to think about. First of all, when anybody has the flu or a cold, you never want to use their phone, right? You never want to use their calculator. You never want to touch their keyboard. I think if everybody owns their own station, they should keep it that way. Like, just, this is mine, I'm responsible for it. Let's not touch it. The thing that I see probably broken the most in terms of protocol, and as much as I hate to say it, it's the one that my eyes are drawn to, are cell phones. You take a call quick and you need to grab something, and that phone has been on your face, and you set that phone down on a countertop so that you can pour a cup of coffee. And that phone is now touching a countertop. So we want to try to make you go with nothing in your hands anywhere from your desk. You've got it, what we call it as high contact areas, right? So if you have a men's room and a women's room, both of those restrooms should have cleaning supplies in them that after somebody uses them as an employee, they should disinfect that bathroom on their way out. This isn't for a company to do. This is a personal responsibility, from doorknob to lock latch to the faucet to the soap dispenser and the paper towel dispenser or the air dryer. You need to have pop-up disinfectant wipes. Let me know if you can find them, because I'll get in on your order, and have them there so that even the toilet flush mechanism, those are things that people, they think that just washing their hands on the way out is good. Well, we teach happy birthday, 20 seconds to wash your hands with a nail brush. I got to tell you, the nail brush, we have this really incredible tool. It's a black light tool that we can put, you can go wash your hands. We turn off the lights and we take this black light tool. We have you put your hands under it and you can see the germs still on your hands. So if you're interested, it's not that much money to go get it. You can get it. If you're interested in really being effective about teaching people how their skin and body interacts in their environment, I recommend that you do that. Run that lab so they can understand what they're up against, and you will teach them through that what we mean by high touch areas. We have a doorbell here in my office. We're not customer facing, but I get an Amazon every day, guaranteed. We don't let anybody just walk into the office anymore. Somebody has to ring the doorbell. We make the decision if we're going to open up the door. If you've got private offices, Brad, maybe you have a private office, you'll want to keep your door closed, and you're going to want to make sure that whoever's coming into your office to interact and sit down, maybe they do have a mask. I quarantine here, as has my sister. I haven't been out in the quote unquote public much, maybe 3 trips to Target, because I'm lucky enough to have things brought here. But in the restaurants, there's every handle, every door to open the door. So every door opener, things that we see people touch, just even if they lean on the counter, we are going to have those disinfectant products available. The grocery store right now, you'll see at Target that they're wiping the belt down between every guest before the groceries get put on it. Think about it that way. If somebody's going to come behind you to use something, I think you should do that. I don't think you need to build big plastic walls, but if you do, I saw a really cool thing on Pinterest. It was clear shower curtains hung from the ceiling. I love that because you can see through them. They're not expensive. And it was kind of groovy that somebody figured it out for $7 to like in between partitions. But anyway, I digress. Go to Pinterest. There's a lot of good stuff out there.
And I might say that make sure you're looking at your state guidelines, because every state is going to be different, and you don't want to be below the standard and be easy target for plaintiffs' attorneys. You know, we don't yet have immunity. I know it's what IFA is going for in the next bill, but if you look at New Jersey, for example, gloves are required. In every setting that you're going to be interfacing potentially with another human being, gloves are required. That's not true in every other state. We will make gloves and face masks and hand sanitizer available in our corporate office, because at least to be able to say we made it available, we could have made them safe or safer. But there are certain environments in certain states where it will be mandatory. Restaurants have been having to, think about gloves for a long time, but hotels have not. And I would argue, since they're touching surfaces, they need gloves and all of those cleaning and front desk positions. And that's going to be a new item of ordering for them. And depending on the industry vertical and depending on the state, that's not necessarily your decision to make. But Brad, knowing where you live, that might be Pritzker's decision to make as to what he might be providing.
I'm not saying a word.
And I'll remind you, because we deal with this, people have latex allergies. You're going to have powder free and powdered and latex free. You're going to have to carry 4 sizes. You need to be aware of that, because having it available, like Shelly is saying, I think that that is what I do. We try to have more than what's required, right? Just like we have to do a lot of dishes in the restaurant business, and the soaps can tear up your hands. We have those grandma to the elbow yellow living glove things for you to do your dishes. You want to think about having the things available that somebody might want, but some people might not. Of course, you want to follow the guidelines, like Shell said, but there's even more that you can do. In my candy jar in my office right now, there are little individual antiseptic wipes for people to take instead of root beer barrels. So that's what's there. And that's how I think about it, having something handy that somebody might have forgotten. I want to say before we run out of time, Shelly did one of the most amazing things I've seen someone do on behalf of the franchise family. And she built this PPE program initially to make sure that all of her great employees and their employees and franchisees and their employees had access. But she's opened that up through a partnership with a couple of other great franchise partners to members of the IFA to be able to order some of this PPE that you can't just go get on your own.
Completely at cost, no markup. We're not making any money.
Markup. And when I sent that out to the franchisee forum members, you're a rock star, because as a franchisee, some brands are not where you're at yet. Some brands don't have distribution channels. They might be emerging brands. They don't have access to some of that stuff. So that was super special, Shell.
Felt
really
good.
cool.
We got to get the country back open, and franchising is family. Yeah. And
that's right.
All come together, and it'll take a village.
Yep.
Shelly, do you want to share how people can find that and take advantage of it? I'm sure we can send it out, Tony, but
I'll give it to you to send out. You might have it from when we shared a drink last week. But libertyfulfillment.com.
Yep.
And you'll just click on register a new account, and then you'll see a PPE Franworth/BrightStar Care as a brand for you to pop all kinds of stuff into the cart. There's 3-ply disposable masks, face shields, protective eye goggles, disposable gloves, lab coats, isolation gowns, non-contact thermometers, digital thermometers, and hand sanitizer bottles. So everything that most businesses should need to get back open. We ordered, like I said, 2 million in quantity. So we'll keep every 3 month supply for ourselves, but where we have extra, we're trying to get the country and franchising in particular back open.
Yeah, amazing.
yeah. So we have 5 more minutes here. There's 25 topics that we want to talk about, but one thing, Shelly, that you mentioned, you talked about 50% of the team's focus is really on kind of COVID response and everything COVID related, and then 50% is making sure that you come out of this stronger. We had a couple of questions submitted on the topic of marketing. I know that we talked personally about some of the marketing initiatives that in video and some different things that you've done, but how are you approaching, knowing also that your product service mix has changed a little bit, how are you approaching getting ahead of this after this COVID stuff starts to pass and we're emerging? How are you looking at that future as it relates to marketing? I'd love to hear quickly from both of you.
Yeah, in 2 ways. It's a really tough call because, business is down on our core business, but I believe that core business will come back. it's one thing to say, I don't need services for my grandma, mom or dad, when you think this is going to be a 2-week ordeal. When it's going to be 2 months, 6 months, 12 months, you're going to need care back in that home. And what brand are you going to feel confident having back in the home? And so when everybody else pulled back off of marketing and from managing my own balance sheet, maybe I should have too, but I doubled down and went on TV, you know, in some ways the public service announcement of stay home, but also how we'll be there to take care of families when they're ready, and how we were the most prepared. You know, we're the only brand that's Joint Commission accredited in all of our locations. And because we are, hand hygiene was part of our, like with TAM, was part of normal business as usual. That's not true for the entire industry. So we came in better prepared, we're weathering well, and we'll grow again. And I think marketing, a big tendency is when dollars are tight, you pull away from marketing. Both Tam and I have shared some, you know, cocktails and evening conversations during the week around now's the time we got to be leaning into marketing. And we both are doing the same thing in our businesses, me for my franchisees. And I think that's critical. I think the same thing, you know, the knee-jerk reaction was to stop franchise sales initially. And I think for us as a franchisor, I think we need to be more adaptive. I think we need to be more understanding that people might take longer to pull the trigger. So you need to have a timeline that matches with their interests. But we rolled out our first virtual discovery day. We learned some things from it. We're making a few pivots. We've got our second one coming up next week. And, you know, we had great attendance and probably a great success rate, but we're showing them that they can learn about the model, you know, other than a funeral home. I think we're as recession resistant as you get. And I don't know if I'd want to run a funeral home, no offense to our funeral home operators, but so it's a real good, feel good business, but it is by and large recession resistant. We have been essential service full time from day one. There's a blessing and a curse to that because it was terrifying to get ready and getting the PPE, and I didn't sleep for weeks until I had it. But for marketing, we've doubled down in every channel. And applied extra. We'll spend more than we would have originally budgeted by about $2.5 to $3 million this year as a brand. But we want our franchisees to come out of this on the other side thriving. And we are working together right now to make sure we weather the storm, but we need them to be in a position to thrive. And what we've seen is there's not that many advertisers. Our message is relevant, and we've seen online marketing inquiries be up 20 to 23% every single week we ran, and that was not true before we ran. So we believe we're spending the dollars prudently. We believe the strategy is right, but you know, I'm a girl. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. It takes some cojones to go execute that strategy. So.
Tam, as we're approaching the final here, we're probably going to go 2 minutes over. I think that your marketing strategy is very kind of local community driven. You talked about your mantra when we chatted before, those 4 words. Everything that we do boils down to these 4 words. If you could share that and maybe a couple of extra ideas on top.
Sure. So in the end, you think about a franchisee, my responsibility is to take the brand that I partnered with, to take the essence of that brand and make it come to life in my neighborhood. And it's a huge responsibility. That's what a partnership really is. And to me, it's an honor to be on that end of the equation, to be a franchisee that can take somebody else's original idea and make it, you know, blossom in different neighborhoods in Minnesota and Iowa. Can be challenging right now, but it comes down to this is my company, my 9 stores, part of our traction work that we do. Our purpose, cause, and passion is very simply, our family feeds friends. And I believe that. We go to work every day knowing that we make a difference in the lives of our customers. We believe that every guest that we have is always behind schedule. It's the life we all live. And that for 3 or 4 minutes, they are going to slow down and choose us. And we get 3 or 4 minutes of their day to make them happy by giving them a great meal that they want and expect, but also an interaction with somebody that's kind to them, that is open and kind of connecting through whatever the times are, whether if we're talking about our great football rivalries between Wisconsin and Minnesota coming up this fall, or if we're talking about the weather, or what I think has been part of our conversation, are you staying safe or not? We've had guests bring fresh baked cookies to our teams, all kinds of food, lasagna. I mean, they bring it in for these kids through the drive-through window. We just want to make sure everybody's taken care of. You're so great. You're the only ones open, and you're open the latest so that we can come out and get a meal when get cabin fever and we don't know what we do. I mean, for me, everything's better with tacos. I recognize it. I support that. But I also think right now that it's important that we look at value. Value doesn't mean putting everything on sale. It means can I do to bring value to the lives of our neighbors whose lives have been interrupted. I mean, if I could throw open a barbecue pit out in every one of my lobbies and we could have a great big family, barbecue, I would do it. People they miss their normal. I am part of their normal in each of our neighborhoods. We're trying to make sure we've got some surprises up our sleeve for this summer. We're going to be doing what's called a 6-pack summer. That does not mean I'm doing sit-ups. It means that
I was hoping beer.
Yeah, I got some rules around that. Get a 6-pack with a 6-pack, but we have a 6-pack. A 6-pack and a pound is by far our most popular meal bundle. We got some fun things already planned for that. We've got some surprises for our customers coming. We'll continue to do that to make sure that we stay connected with what matters to them, which is in the end their community and their family. So that to me is my best marketing tool.
Well, we want to thank both of you guys because you guys have been phenomenal. And we really appreciate the practical advice that Sherry and I have discussed about opening our office, when and what we need to do for it. And I cannot tell you, I know both your schedules are crazy. So thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. And
I mean, it's amazing. Shelly will tell you that I begged her. True, but she did it. And I'm very grateful because I know how busy you are. I know we've been in communication for this time. Let me just give folks for 30 seconds an update on Springboard. So we don't know what's going to happen in Philly because we don't know whether we're going to be able to open or not, whether we'll be able to have congregations of more than X number of people. But our plan is to move forward with a slightly more abbreviated event on the 21st to the 23rd, which is a Monday to Wednesday. Why are you smiling, Brian?
Because I'm optimist. We're going.
So we actually reached out to a lot of our regular constituency to see what their appetite was for travel, just to get a sense of what we were trying to manage down our room commitment. And we were enlightened to know that people hate their spouses and siblings and whoever else they're living with. No, people are looking for a break and eagerly awaiting being able to do something. I don't know if that'll be overridden by no-fly rules and companies and other things, but we're going to try to go forward. We're going to try to do something a little bit creative and try to make it, a little both of everything, but I don't want to get too far committed, but it will be, Brad and I like to go for it. So
yeah,
like you guys just said, you like a challenge. we maybe had a bloody nose and a black eye on this one. Anyway, but we love you guys. You keep our programming, our events, and the way we look at our family relevant by participating in stuff like this. And I can't thank you enough. It's just amazingly great. Ryan.
Thank you guys.
You're awesome as usual, Ryan.
Yeah. It was great.
Thank you guys.
Great to be on. Thanks, guys.
Talk to you guys.
Everybody take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.